Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar this morning on retaining customers in tough times. My name is Jessica Pallett. I am a senior consultant at Redflank, and I will be the facilitator for this session this morning. Just want to do a quick sound check to my fellow panelists. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone see me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think if we dive right in, if we take a look at what we'll be covering in our next hour together, we'll do some introductions. So we'll look at the three great panelists that will be presenting with us today, and that will be, talking through our content in terms of how to retain customers in tough times. So what we'll do firstly is we'll delve into the current situation. So what are the current economic conditions that are currently impacting your customers? How are they impacting these customers? What sort of impact is it having on your customers? And how are they potentially responding to this? From there, we'll go on to look at the diagnostic, where we'll look at some practicalities around customer loyalty and what sort of impact does customer experience have on customer loyalty? Who are the key role players, and how does this differ in different types of businesses? After that, we'll look at the fix, in which we'll really delve into how should your company respond in times like these. So where customers are potentially looking to jump ship, what can your customer, or what can your organization rather, do about it in order to maintain or retain those customers that are looking to leave. After that, we'll have a Q&A session. So you should all see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little icon that says Q&A. Please feel free to post any questions you may have there during the session. We'll then come to that at the end of the session. We'll have a facilitated discussion, and our panelists will answer any questions you may have. After that, we'll go on to the lucky draw, where one lucky attendee will stand a chance to win a customer diagnostics package, which includes a survey and a diagnostics report from Redflank. If we delve into the introductions, so we're joined by three great panelists here today. That is Valerie Webley, Lings Naidu, and Etienne van Wyk. So Valerie Webley is our customer experience specialist. She has over 22 years of experience in the customer relationship space, having worked as a customer relationship manager for BMW, as well as working on customer relationship strategies for numerous organizations, such as Jaguar Land Rover, PG Bison, etc. Her key kind of experience in this area includes things such as customer touchpoint management, customer data management, as well as personalized customer communications and marketing. Secondly, we have Lings Naidu, who is the director and founder of Redflank. He's also the CEO of Beyond COVID, and he is our customer analysis specialist. So Lings Naidu has around 26 years of experience in the management consulting space. He's worked with numerous blue chip companies across a variety of organizations and across a variety of sectors, including the financial services sector, telco, retail, etc. During his time at Redflank, he's led numerous customer-focused projects, and that's really involved, the collection, the analysis, and the modeling of data for around 4,000 customer data sets. He's also played he has key experience in upgrading business models and operating models in order to help organizations really optimize their customer experience. Lastly, we have Etienne van Wyk, who is our customer strategy specialist. So Etienne has around 24 years experience in strategy and in research. He played a key role as the senior manager at Accenture for a while, where he really assisted them with their distribution strategy, and he provided advice with regards to, what is the optimal business strategy. He's also played a key role in a number of strategy projects during his time at Redflank, including for numerous organizations, and that includes organizations such as the National Development Agency, as well as the Transport Sector Education and Training Authority. So I think we're joined by some pretty great panelists today. I think we're going to have a very exciting discussion. I'm certainly excited. I hope the rest of you are as well. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Etienne, who will take us through the current context. Thanks, Etienne.
Thank you, Jessica, for that warm and generous introduction. I think even for those amongst us that don't read the news, we do know that things are going pretty rough at the moment, both in South Africa as well as across the world. Now, there is a number of factors that is coalescing around this point in time to drive massive change in both international and local economic and political structures. The first of those is just the intense globalization that the world has gone through in the last 30 years since the end of the Cold War, which means no country is in isolation of any other country. The second major event that we are now really getting the full impact of has been COVID, which has plunged a lot of people, especially those employed by small businesses, into unemployment. It has wiped out savings. It has led to enormous government grants for people that weren't working, as well as supply chain interruptions, which has caused, lit the bonfire for international inflation. And off the back of that, the banking sector had to respond with interest rate. The second massive player in our current economic situation is the climate change agenda, specifically the change of the regulatory regimes towards moving away from fossil fuels. The most immediate impact of that was that the capital markets are now shunning projects, especially oil refineries. Big Oil has been closing down oil refineries all over the world, including South Africa. So the petrol and diesel has dried up, and what that means is the petrol prices has just gone through the roof, which way it will probably stay until such time as the demand for petrol disappears with renewable technologies coming in. The third or the fourth factor that is really playing in our world right now is the Ukraine conflict, which is to be, is actually a proxy conflict for control of the European gas market, which has been dominated by Russia since about 1970. There are new entrants into the market, specifically Iran and Qatar, that sits on the world's biggest gas field in the Persian Gulf. They've already started to offer their gas to Russia. There's going to probably be an interim period where Europe is going to build gas-fired power stations for a short while, but after that, the Qatar and especially the Iranian gas is going to come online. The Persian Empire is going to come back, in all of its glory. But the implications thereof is obviously the very economic existence of, and survival of the Russian people. So they are in it for the long haul. Shots have been fired, literally. There's a Ukraine conflict. Russian gas pipelines to Germany has been blown up. I doubt the pipelines from Iran and Qatar will go unmolested either. So it is a conflict that's only really started. It's not one that's anywhere near to its end. Now, the symptoms of these underlying factors have been a couple of horsemen of the apocalypse. The biggest is obviously, energy prices have gone up. We know about petrol, we know about electricity prices, both globally and as well as locally. And, energy is the foundation for all other industries. So energy price inflation drives inflation across manufacturing, agriculture, even services. Okay. Now, above and beyond the big energy battles that we have now for the European gas market, we also have Eskom, which is the gift that keeps on giving. And I think the big stat, that was for me a shining light, in illuminating Eskom's situation is since 2007 to I think 2021, the country's overall inflation rate was 124%. So prices for everything on average pretty much doubled since 2007. However, for Eskom, it was been 753% from 2007 to 2021. Now, Eskom has put forward to NERSA now, they want tariff increases of 38% for next year, which would mean that the Eskom tariffs have increased by 1,000% in the last 14 years. Obviously, that has crippled the entire economy. It has fueled unemployment. And the fact that everything's more expensive and less people are buying means that there's a massive squeeze. Obviously, food inflation is also rampant off the back of, energy price inflation and the supply chains being disrupted now by the Ukraine war, which is not going to go away anytime soon. Then the banks have raised the interest rate to try and cool down the markets, to try and bring the inflation back. Now, I don't personally know how higher interest rates is going to be doing anything, caused by energy-driven inflation, but, the economic theory says that it should curb the rise of inflation. And then obviously you've got massive unemployment. Now, what that generally means for your consumers, or if you are an employee yourself, is you have no leverage to, negotiate an increase in your salary. So you've got to suck it up, and now you've got to change what you do. Now, necessity is the mother of all invention. And what that means is there are now changes afoot. Customers are going to think differently about their world. First and foremost, customers still need to spend. The basics still needs to happen. They need to eat, they need to get to work, they need a hot shower, and they need to pay their mortgage, So in certain categories, the spending has actually become more, okay? But for the other categories, obviously, there's been a decrease in customer loyalty, brands like Zuid just taking over the market because their products are inexpensive, abandoning, treasured brands from a long time. There's showing on and more investment through these high prices, and consumers are going to be willing to try. What happened is in the digital age, is now the ability to do very aggressive research and price shopping, and more of that will take place. Having a web presence, reach your services is going to become more important than anything. And then finally, generations differ in terms of their willingness to change and their embrace of change. In summary, though, what we have is a world that's in flux, a lot of change that's going on. People's disposable income or income outside of energy, food, and finance costs that's available to spend has become a lot less. And that has a big impact on anybody that wants to hold on to their customer or even feel the need to raise the prices of their products. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Etienne, for that insightful stuff. I think it's very interesting to know, what is currently impacting our customers. From here, let's hand over to Valerie, who will take us through the diagnostic. Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you, Jessica. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Etienne, for painting the overall picture. What I want to do is I want to look at some of the ways you might choose to examine and assess your current customer base and how you might implement tailored strategies to actually manage their expectation and retain customers under these difficult conditions. And strangely enough, as a customer experience expert, I'm going to start with recommending that there may be some customers that you don't want to keep, which sounds counterintuitive. But what most organizations fail to do is really have a good look at their current customer base. And this is one model that you can use depending on your type of business. But you can see, you can look at the profitability of a customer against the length of your relationship with them. So obviously the customers you want are the people in the top right-hand corner, the true friends. But you might have customers that are with you for the short term that are very profitable, or you might have customers that come and go that don't really profit your organization. But the group that I want to speak about in a little more detail is the bottom right, which we call barnacles. It's a strange word. We actually investigated the other day exactly what it means. But barnacles are sea creatures. that actually attach themselves to things like the bottom of a wooden boat. And when too many barnacles attach themselves to a boat, they actually start to slow it down, slow its performance, and the boat has to go in for a refit and scrape the barnacles off. So you can see why I'm saying this isn't your normal customer experience message, but sometimes if you've got a long-term customer where you're simply not making profit, you can't change the relationship, you might want to introduce some strategies that are actually going to take you away from that relationship. You can even go as far as firing a customer if that customer is no longer profitable for you and the relationship isn't working. So I think the message there, yes, we want customers to have a good experience, but as business owners, we're doing it because we need those customers to help the profitability of our business as well. So it has to be a win-win partnership. And then just briefly looking at true friends, these are the people that you really need to look after. You want to communicate with them consistently, but not too often that you put them off. And you want to build that emotional loyalty with those true friends and delight and nurture them, defend yourself against competitors, and then retain them as those long-term customers. So what I want to look at next is loyalty. We were talking about those long-term customers. And sometimes we get a bit fooled by thinking that people are loyal to us. I've been with my bank since 1992. The truth is, I'm not really a totally loyal customer. I'm there because it's easy for me. I can't be bothered to switch. And really, loyalty only gets tested when somebody has to make a decision and repurchase. So there's sometimes a difference between an existing customer that's actually not bringing you in a lot of business and a loyal customer that's repurchasing from you over and over again and recommending to people. So looking at the types of people who are loyal, you might have someone who's just generally happy, they're satisfied, they're willing to go on, they've got no big emotional connection with you, but you obviously want to keep them. Then you might have people that are only loyal because the price is right for them. So as Etienne was saying, in a situation where prices are going up, where people have less disposable income, these are the people that you could be at more risk when it comes to keeping them. Then you've got the convenience loyal people. You're close to their home. They find it easy to use you. It's painless, but they're not really emotionally connected. Then you've got the people that are in it for any benefits. I personally don't really believe that loyalty cards work. I've got loyalty cards for everybody under the sun. It doesn't change my behavior. But for example, I do have a particular card for one of the fuel stations. And when we're driving, we try and always stop at that fuel station. So it does create a bit of loyalty. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Then you've got the just because, that's like me and my bank, where it's just too painful, I can't be bothered, it works okay, so I'm just staying. It's nothing special. And then you've got those truly loyal customers. I don't know if you've ever done it, but these are the people that are recommending you everywhere, telling people how wonderful you are, sending your details without being asked, helping you to sell behind the scenes. And these are these real friends. So you don't want to ignore any of these groups, but when you're thinking about who's at risk and what do I need to do to retain my customers, then you want to keep this in mind, that these are the different groups that you're dealing with, and not, I think the overall message always with customer experience and CRM is that it's never one size fits all. What works for one group of apparently loyal customers might not work for another, and there may be some that you just simply have to accept that you lose, particularly maybe someone who's only loyal to prices. So I also want to look at the different types of relationships. We've spoken only about customers, But there's a lot of people involved in your supply chain, some that you're very aware of and some that you maybe don't really think about, but they're there. And the biggest difference that I've always almost sort of struggled a bit with is the difference between a business to business relationship and a business to customer relationship. So if your customers are other businesses, you might have to build quite a different relationship with them to someone who's dealing direct with the end customer. So, for example, I did some work at one time where I had to go into pharmacies and pretend to have heartburn and see if they offered me a particular product. And the reason I had to do that because the supplier of that product wanted to find out what happened when the real customer actually dealt with the pharmacy. So, for example, with Dischem, that supplier of medical products, they've got to build up such a good relationship with Dischem. They've got to be able to influence the Dischem staff to offer their product, as well as have the basics in place like pricing and product availability, because they're not able to influence that end customer. We also often overlook other external stakeholders. Etienne was talking about climate change challenges, legislative requirements, things that affect the way you do business that will eventually affect your end customer, and even your competitors. What your competitors are doing is going to affect what you do and how you speak to your end customer and what experience. If I just look to the left, the number one thing that's going to switch me off is if the site is not user-friendly. The majority of people, I think something like over 70%, are now interacting with the internet purely from their mobiles. So if you've got a site that doesn't work nicely on a mobile screen, people are just going to walk away and look for somebody else. Then the other thing is things like returns policies, delivery policies, because you're not talking to the person and persuading them in person. These things have to be so clear, so flexible, so obvious that they're able to make their choices without any help. And then something that, again, I think it's generational, but something like 77% of people asked in the US recently said that they look at reviews before they make a decision. So they don't just come onto your site, choose something and buy it. They're looking at reviews, and they're also looking at how you have responded to other reviews. So if you don't respond to the reviews you're getting, be they good or bad, something like 57% of people are unlikely to shop from you. So they're looking for good reviews, but they're also looking for you being responsive. So we're back to that human versus artificial intelligence. You need that person there that's actually responding to the reviews, helping people who've got questions. What hours they're available depends on your industry and what you decide to do. But I feel strongly if you're going to have an emotional customer experience and connection, you cannot rely only on a system, no matter whether you're dealing with younger purchasers or not. And to finish my bit, I want to just do a quick example about how somebody has done well despite all the challenges that Etienne was first speaking about. And we know that the COVID lockdown was a shock, and it had a tremendous impact on a lot of businesses, especially small businesses. I think a few businesses benefited. I see couriers everywhere all the time. I'm sure they benefited. And talking about the electricity crisis, obviously, if you're selling solar panels, you're in a good business at the moment. But a lot of people found it very, very hard. There's a company, I think they're based in Sweden, called IKEA, and they sell furniture, but they sell it in flat packs that people have to assemble themselves. And what happened was, during lockdown, people were spending a lot of time at home, so they wanted to enhance their home. And they were also looking for hobbies or things to do at home that would keep them busy. So IKEA picked up on that and made their messaging attract people that were looking for improving their homes, looking for something to do, and sent them these sent them offers for this flat pack furniture. And they actually had, I think I'm looking now here, during the COVID lockdown and for the rest of that year, they saw a $40 billion worldwide profit. So I'm not saying it was all because they went that way, but they did what we've just been discussing. They looked at their customer base, they looked at the type of people that they need to manage their relationships with, they looked at the current challenges, and they found a way to say, okay, despite all these negative things going on, this is what I can do to retain and even increase my customer base. And I think that was a really good example that, yes, there are problems, but there are always ways to try and find solutions. Thank you, Jessica. I want to hand back now for yourself and Liz.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I think that was very insightful. Definitely interesting to know that, while we're looking to retain customers, it's not all types of customers that we want to retain, and understanding, what really impacts that customer loyalty. I think that was a great, segment, very, very insightful. From here, I'll hand over to Lings Naidu, and he'll be taking us through the fix. Thanks, Lings.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So Etienne's talked about the difficult circumstances we are all in. It's not just South Africa, we know it's worldwide. And as people that play key roles in businesses, what you're going to be interested in is, what does it mean for your customers? And if you think of this using the analogy of a ship, what you want to really spot is the jumpers, right? So if you're on a cruise ship, you want to know which of your customers are standing, on the deck against the rails, ready to jump off. You might actually find that some of your customers have already, in the water. And in that case, you're probably going to ask yourself, what do you do? And research indicates that if you have a customer that's in hot water, so not entirely happy with you, if you're able to turn that situation around, those customers are twice as likely to recommend your company as other customers. So as a company, we need to, as businesses, we need to be realistic. In difficult circumstances, customers are going to move to competitors a lot more easily. And we need to be aware of this possibility. And as businesses, try and understand, first of all, how do we spot them? So using the analogy of the ship again, you're going to find, when rough weather approaches, you might be in choppy seas. Some people are going to make their way up to the deck, because that's where they will get some air, and we'll give them some options in terms of, when a ship passes by, to jump. Other customers, other passengers on a ship are going to, be in the situation where they've just had a big night at the nightclub on the ship, and they're going to be sleeping it off, and you're going to have some time in terms of deciding, how you tackle those customers and what's your best way to respond to their circumstances. And then there's going to be those guys, on the ship, maybe the older customers that have been on a couple of cruises with you, and they know that, there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel, and they're going to be really comfortable that they're on this massive ship that is your business. So the key here is that we need to understand that not all customers are the same. Now, in your business, what is it that you want to understand? What is it that you want to spot with regard to your customers, so you can do what every business wants to do, right, in this situation? You want to ensure that you retain as many of your profitable customers as you can. Now, Valerie walked through one way of putting customers into buckets that allow you to deal with them in a specific and appropriate way. What we have on this slide is just another model to think about. I like this one because it's very specific. to the situation we're in at the moment. So if you were able to understand how satisfied customers are, and believe it or not, as much as we as people in business like to think all our customers are in the good to excellent range in terms of how satisfied they are, we do have customers that are in the fair and the poor range as well. The other important dimension that's reflected on this graph is customer loyalty. So that's how likely is your customer to stay with you. This depends on a lot of factors, and Valerie's talked about some of them. What's important to understand is quite often customer loyalty is emotional. So as an example, my wife is a big iPhone fan, and nothing will get it to change. As an example, some people out there will only buy a BMW, they'll never buy a Mercedes. So there's an emotional attachment here, and this isn't necessarily easy to break. But imagine you had this view of all of the people, all of the customers, the clients that your business does work with or sells products to. What you'd find is that your clients and your customers would fit into these kind of broad categories. The zone of loyalty is where customers are both satisfied and loyal. And those are customers that are going to stick with you through this difficult period, rising interest rates, low disposable income. And then you're going to have customers that are in what we call the zone of defection. So these are the customers that you are in danger of losing. As Valerie said, and I know it's counterintuitive, but there are some customers that will cost you money. And those ones are the ideal ones for you now to shed, right? So I'll give you a simple example. When we do work in banking, on one of the projects, we were looking at the cost of addressing a situation where a customer goes into overdraft, right? So he goes above his credit limit. Simple stat that I found shocking when it came up was that for every one customer that goes bad, so a customer that exceeds his limit, you need another 19 good customers, so customers that haven't gone bad to break even. And that simply points to some customers take up more effort and don't bring as much revenue. So now's a great time to look at customers that sit in your zone of deflection and say, which ones do I want to keep and which ones might I want to let go? And wouldn't that be a wonderful gift for your competitors? The guy that sits on the phone with you the whole day and spends, 10 Rand a year, wouldn't it be great to pass that person on to your customer, to your competitors? Now, the important thing here is that what we need to do as businesses is we need to understand that not all customers are equal. Some of them are going to be different from others. And what that means is their needs are going to be different, and how you engage with them, the offers you put on the table relative to them, they need to be specific. We can't do a one size fits all. Now, I know a lot of companies out there, a lot of businesses have these very fancy customer segmentation models, but you need one that's practical and usable, right? So as an example, breaking up your customer base into a segment that says empty nest, that's useful. But number one, will you know when a customer is an empty nest customer? So, parents whose children have recently left home. And more importantly, what will you be able to do with that information? How will you treat an empty nest customer differently from an aspiring, professional, as an example? So these customer segments need to be practical and they need to be usable. Now, in the next slide, what we'll be talking about is what do we do with that insight? Now that you've grouped your customers in categories, what you want to know is, what you want to be able to do is want to be able to predict their next move. Now, as a business, imagine before a customer called you to say, I'm actually, finding that times are tight. As much as I value the relationship with your company, I'm finding that, I really just can't afford your product anymore. And this might be another business that's a client. It might be an individual that's a client. Wouldn't it be great if a week before the customer picked up the phone to make that call, you could say, you could tell, you could predict that that was going to happen, and you could proactively approach a customer and say, what can we do to improve your current situation? So you retain that customer. Remember, it's a lot more expensive to get a new customer than to retain an existing one, right? So it's normally a factor of 5 to 10 times the cost to retain than to get a new customer. Now, I was speaking to Jakes, who's the head of the data hub. So that's the data team at Redflank. And he was working on a model to predict if you had certain key information on a customer, how could we then predict the probability that that person would jump ship, that they would leave to move to another customer, to a competitor. And in these kinds of situations, the way the mathematicians and the statisticians talk about is they talk about a black box. So the way a black box works is you feed a whole lot of data in, and what it does is it will give you a percentage, yes or no, will the customer likely jump ship in the next 6 months or not? And, working with people like Jake's, we can do, as businesses, we can adopt that kind of approach. We can say, let's get some really intelligent, regression analysis, market basket analysis, correlation, look at correlation coefficients and come up with this magic box. And the software exists. People like Jakes can assist us, should we decide to go that route. But there's simple stuff you can do as well, right? So when times are tough, what you could do is approach those customers that you have a feel might be going through tough times. The smaller businesses perhaps that are your customers, those customers that are loyal, been with you a long time, but based on prior experience that they're probably a bit more cost conscious. You could proactively go out and bring those account management sessions forward so you could speak to them, right? And find out, you could ask them, how are things going? What is the likelihood that you're still going to be able to afford our kind of service for the next 6 months? Now, that's a good strategy and it can work, but you need to be mindful as well that, and you would have encountered this, right? You're sitting in a restaurant and the manager walks past and they say, how's things going? Is the food is the food fine? Are you enjoying the restaurant? And how many times do we just say, no, everything's fine. And as soon as they walk away, you're telling your husband or your wife how terrible the food is. So there's value in doing that. What would be better is if you can do it in a way where people feel more comfortable to provide that feedback. And what we find is simple surveys can do a world of good. We are doing some work at the moment where we ask simple questions. As I said, how likely are you to continue purchasing this product or this service in the next 6 months? And they will say, very likely, very unlikely, likely, unsure. And when you aggregate those, what you will be able to tell is what types of customers are more likely to leave in the next 6 months than, further down the line. So you can do, some common sense stuff. You can do some stuff that's a little bit more sophisticated. And then you can increase that level of sophistication all the way up to the level of the black box. The key thing is you need to understand the type of customer and be able to predict, how they may respond to current circumstances so you can catch, that situation before it actually arises. Next step then is, Etienne's talked about the difficult circumstances. Valerie's talked about, how do you gain insight into your customers' current status and how their behavior may change forward. I've embellished on that a little bit, but what you're going to be thinking about is, okay, you have some insight into your customer, wonderful, you're able to paint a customer or put a tag on the top of their head. Not a real tag naturally, but an imaginary one. So every time you encounter a customer, you see red, amber, green. Green means this person's secure. As a customer, you're not likely to lose them. Red means, this person is about to jump ship. Number one, is it someone you want to lose? So you kind of stand back and do nothing, or maybe even encourage them out the door. Alternatively, what you would want to do is say, what do I need to do differently? And whether we're in the middle of choppy seas or whether we on, sailing on a flat ocean, what I'm about to talk about now, the operational response is absolutely key. So what research again indicates is that if you invest time to treat customers in an appropriate fashion to their current circumstances and their needs and their expectations, your likelihood of having a happier customer that stays with you is more likely to join you, shoots up dramatically, right? So the research indicates that as a company, on average, if you invest time in taking your operations and customizing it to give each customer the most appropriate service, interaction experience at that time of the interaction, your revenues will go up by 70% in a 3-year period. What you'll also find is that the customer's experience is a lot more positive, right? So I'll give you some examples. This is a diagram that indicates, any typical business. There are certain customers that you're serving. You access them through distribution channels. Valerie talked about how much more prevalent online is. So prior to the pandemic, from a personal perspective, my wife and I like to, make our way to the shopping centers and even, spend time in places like a Woolies or Pick n Pay and get our stuff. We haven't done that for 2 years, and we're unlikely to go back.
Sorry, I just want to do a quick 5-minute time check.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's my notice to wrap it up. What I wanted to communicate here is in your business, if you look at the value proposition that you put in out your business operations, you need to be able to adjust your business operations so they deal with each customer in the most appropriate fashion. So as an example, if someone calls into a call center and they're very upset, it's common sense that you want to drop the temperature. The question is, how far do you go, right? So if it's a customer that's a very loyal customer that is contributing a lot of money to your bottom line, that's the person with the green tag above their head, then what you'd want to do is you'd want to, in your business processes, indicate to the call center agent that this is someone you need to, go the 10,000 extra miles to satisfy and to retain. On the other hand, if it's a customer that, has been a bugbear for your business, they wouldn't go to the same level of effort. So you almost want your operations to run in the fashion of, let's say if someone calls your finance department and they say, I need a payment arrangement because I can't afford to make my payment this month. If it's a customer that you want to retain, that's adding a lot of money to your bottom line, you will bend over backwards to make that happen. If not, then you will actually adopt a different approach. So what you want to do is at every point in your organization, you want to ensure that your organization is geared up in such a fashion to give your customer the best experience, not just meet their need. When someone orders something from Takealot, they expect the product to appear on their doorstep the next day. That's just getting out of the blocks. How do you ensure that the customer's experience is the absolute best experience it can be when it's required any point in your business process? If you can do that, what research again indicates is that 80% of customers that have a great customer experience are willing to pay a higher price for the same product or service. So let me bring all these things together, right? Which is where the next slide comes in, is what do you do now? We know we're in difficult circumstances. We know that disposable income from your customers is dropping. We know that you're going to be losing customers. How do you stem that outflow? And what do you do today? What do you do tomorrow? What do you do next week? And what do you do next month? So the first thing is you need to shine a light on the current situation. You want to know which customers jumped, which customer is about to jump, which customers are secure, sitting below decks, and they're going to be with you for the next, 3 months, next year, next 2 years, next 10 years, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to get eyes on the situation. You want to understand what that looks like. As I said, you can do simple things like, just engage with your customers more often. You can analyze your data. But at the end of the day, what all of our customers say is, all of them, once they have that insight, whether it's through a survey that's run or whatever, they say they are a lot happier because they know what the current situation is. Once you know what the current situation is with your customers, you need to decide 2 things. The one is, what is the quick fix? So a quick fix is, as an example, one of the things you can do is, once you identify the customers at the risk, you can go out there and have a chat with them and find out, what is it that their current pain points are and how can you actually help? So in the case of the ship, you know, if you find out that some of the people are not feeling a bit queasy, you can hand out seasickness pills. You can help get them out to deck and get some air, right? You can put a special offer out there for all our, so you send out a mailer, you make a call and say, as a loyal customer, we know that times are tough. We are going to be offering you a 10% discount on all your purchases for the next 6 months. Builds real gratitude and cements a, you know, an emotional link. That's the quick fix. What you also need to think about is the proper fix. So the proper fix is what I talked about in the previous slide. How can you adjust your operations so that the customers, you adjust the way in which you treat customers at every touch point so that you maximize the opportunity to retain those customers that are at risk. You let those customers go that, you know, you shouldn't be keeping, and that in general, you optimize the customer experience. So quick summary then, Etienne talked about, you know, the difficult circumstances customers are in. Their behavior is going to change. You're going to lose customers. You need to decide how you manage that process. Valerie talked about insights with customers. And that brings us to your immediate next steps. The one is you want to understand what status your customers are in, and then you want to decide what is your quick fix and what is the proper fix, which is where you adjust your operations. With that, let me hand back to Jess.
Thanks so much, Lings. I think, thank you so much for that very insightful segment. Definitely very interesting. And I think a big thank you to all three of our panelists, Lings, Valerie, and Etienne, for the insights that you've shared with us today. With that, I will open up the floor to questions and answers. If anyone wants to post a question, please go ahead and do so, and we'll do this QA session with our panelists. We will also be bringing up a slide that has the panelists' contact details on it. So if you would like to contact any of our panelists afterwards, you know, please go ahead and do that. As you can see, their emails are on the screen now. If we maybe don't have time to get to your question, or you want to have a discussion with them offline, please feel free to reach out and get in touch with us. So I see there was an initial question that was posted. Perhaps, Valerie, I can aim this at you. Raiden asked, what is more important, client satisfaction or general profit?
And I think I'm going to do one of those wobbly answers, which is like both. I think the trouble is that you're not going to see increases in your profits if you don't have satisfied customers. But you've also got to make your own business decisions about how you price yourself and what means profit to you. So some organizations have thousands of customers, each at a very small profit. Other organizations need to have a smaller number of customers that are exceedingly profitable. And that's why it's that thing I was trying to say earlier, that it's about really understanding who are your customers, what are they willing to pay, what are you willing to accept, how satisfied are they, and if somebody that is currently profitable, if you see, like Lynn says, that they might be someone who's going to jump, try and find out what the problem is. Is it that it's something to do with the experience, or is it something that's out of your control? So I'm afraid it's not a straightforward answer.
Great, thank you so much for that, Valerie. I think I will pose the second question to you as well, if that's okay. Don't disappear just yet. So we had another question from an anonymous attendee, and they asked, I just wanted to ask, how important is the link between employee satisfaction and customer experience, and which one should I focus on first?
Okay, and I'll try and be quick here because I know we're running out of time. In the old days, when I first got involved in CRM, we focused only on the customer. But it's become increasingly clear that no matter what wonderful systems, processes, offers, communications you put in place, if at that moment when your customer interacts with an employee, they get a poor emotional experience, whether it's online, on the telephone, in person, it almost spoils that entire effort from your CRM strategy. So my thinking has actually changed, that the employee is becoming equal to, if not more important than the customer. So the way you select, the way you train, the way you look after your employees is going to have a massive impact on that final customer experience.
Okay, very interesting.
Yes.
Thank you, Valerie. Yes,
Jess,
James.
if I could just add to that, it's you know the question that was posed is part of, I think, a broader question, right? Because we all know it makes common sense it's just common sense that you want happy customers. Of course, you need to manage the cost of that. So if you spend so much money on keeping your customers happy, you're going to make a loss, right? So it has to be very directed. But the happy employee, in my mind, is part of the broader, how is the organization set up to ensure, ideal customer experience? And obviously, if you have unhappy employees, it's not going to be a good customer experience. But the other elements that come in, the technology, how quick your processes are, and so on.
Definitely. Thanks, Sings. Perhaps I'll pose this next question to you then. So someone's asked, I have not increased my prices because I'm worried that I will lose too many customers. Can you help me with the modeling aspect of this? In other words, help me to figure out how many customers I might lose if I increase my prices by X%, how many prices I'm likely to keep, also how many customers I need to stay profitable.
Okay, it's a very good question. It reminds me of, a situation that we have faced with a client as well. I'll probably get shot for saying this, but when it comes to pricing, you want to price as high as the customer is willing to pay. And with regards to, considering pricing increases, now's a good time to think about that, right? Because what you will find is, so if you're in the solar business, you probably find demand is quite high, and that gives you the opportunity to charge a higher price than you normally would. Of course, there's a limit to that, right? So if customers feel like they're being cheated, then they won't buy your product and you will lose them in droves. So long story short, modeling in terms of looking at different client segments and developing an understanding of how much they are willing to pay is important. The rule of thumb with pricing is no matter what you price, there's going to be a percentage of people that will be unhappy with the price. Either they will feel it's too high, or if they feel it's too low, then there will be a perception that the quality is not good. So long story short is it pays to model, and it doesn't hurt to actually do some research, focus group surveys with your customers so you can test what their likely reaction might be.
Great, thanks, Sings. We have two more questions. Valerie is just directly answering one of them. We have a question from Raiden, which I think I see one has just popped up from Zane as well. So perhaps we can take those two questions just quickly in the interest of time, so if we can have quick responses to them. So the first one from Raiden, I'll just pose to all panelists, whoever wants to come in. He's asking, if I have a business model that focuses on quantity rather than quality, i.e. selling cheaper products at a margin, and I know that the product is not necessarily a great product, what are some of the ways to increase client satisfaction?
Okay, let me start, and I'm sure Etienne and Valerie will come in as well. The first point to note is that there isn't a problem per se if you're running a business with what we call a cheap product. So I would call it a more affordable product. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to meet a couple of customers' needs when you put a product or service out there. The one obviously is quality, price, and then service, those three elements, and they wrap together in terms of a common theme. So if you're if your focus is on a lower cost product, it's important to understand even the customers buying a low cost product has certain expectations. So if, for instance, he's expecting a low price, you can't, mess with that too much for that segment. He's going to have a certain expectation of quality for that price, so you need to ensure that you adhere to that. What you will find is that without a focus on customer experience and keeping your customer satisfied, you're going to find that there are some people that even for the price will feel the quality is not adequate. So you need to be able to identify them and either offer them a new product that is available at a better quality at a somewhat increased price, The other thing you can do is, I suspect you may be alluding to the fact that there is an opportunity to improve your quality, charge a higher price, and go after a different market. And from that perspective, again, insight is a good place to start. So better understand your current base, segment them into smaller groups that may be different, and then look beyond that, your current market, to see what other customers may be looking for in terms of price and quality.
Okay, thanks so much, Things. Maybe we can jump to the next one, just next and final one, just in the interest of time. And just a very quick response to this. Zane just asked, how do you see the link between the omni-channel experience versus the customer experience to drive the conversion of sales? Maybe I can ask Valerie to come in there and respond to that quickly. Valerie, are you with us?
Sorry, you threw me there completely because I thought you were about to do the lucky draw.
No problem. Sure. So Zane was just asking, how do you see the link between the omni-channel experience versus the customer experience to drive the conversion of sales? If we can just do maybe a very quick response to that.
Okay, so again, it's not an easy answer, but people are measuring their expectations of your company and their experience in every single way they interact with you. And real omni-channel experience means that if I've been online and then I phone and then I go into the store and then I go onto social media, I need you to pick up and know, I want to be acknowledged. This is who I am. This is the different steps I've already taken. And these are, any questions or difficulties. The worst thing, it's not omni-channel if every time I interact with you, somebody asks me all the basics again. So I don't know if that's answering exactly what you're asking, but that's the quick off the top of my head.
Thanks, Valerie. And I think, as I mentioned, if anyone has any more questions for our panelists, please feel free to reach out and they'd love to engage with you further. Then just our very last segment for the day. I know we are a little bit over time and I do apologize for that, but just to do our lucky draw quickly for the winner of our customer diagnostics package. We can move on to the next slide, please. So I think a big congratulations to Jolene Linda. Congratulations, Jolene. You have won the customer diagnostics package. So what that means is Redflank will be in touch with you and we'll discuss next steps from here. I think with that, again, another big congratulations to Jolene and another big thank you to all of our panelists who joined us here today, as well as all of you who signed onto our webinar. We really appreciate your time and I hope you felt that you learned something, in our webinar today. And with that, I'd just like to wish everyone a lovely Wednesday and a great week from here on out. Thank you so much, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye-bye.